Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Sinke. I'm the Chief Business Officer here at Bittrex Global, and I'm the host of our video AMA Ask Me Anything today. And we are featuring Kudos. Our guest is Matt Hawkins. He is the CEO and founder of Kudos. And so, Matt, thank you for joining us today. We're excited about the listing and the partnership, and I think we're all excited to learn more about the Kudos token.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
So for our AMAs and the Bid podcast, we typically like to start off by asking everybody that comes on the show their origin story. So I'd love to hear from you how you got into crypto, when you bought your first Bitcoin, what led you to found Kudos.
Sure. So if I kind of go back quite a period, if you kind of go back to 2000, when I started the last business we had, we actually started a cloud and internet company. And this started just as the internet was really taking off, kind of before cloud, and you had Google and Amazon. And we made it easier for companies to get onto the internet. And that model grew and scaled. We ended up in 55 data centers around the world. We ended up across basically the US, Europe, Asia, built fiber networks, data centers, and ended up the biggest data center aggregator in the UK. But while we were running that business, we were just seeing all this waste in IT capacity. So cloud platforms, data centers, fiber networks, they kind of have anything up to 80% spare capacity. But at the same time, you're building all this infrastructure. The top service providers are spending about 75 billion a year just trying to keep up with the demand. But we've got all this unutilized capacity. So we wanted to build a network that was able to use the capacity out there, which if you simplify it is kind of the Airbnb for cloud computing model, which you've heard before. But we took kind of a different approach because we have been one of the largest service providers before. We knew what needed to be built so that you could actually service that industry, which is it's over 100 billion a year. But it got to 2016 and kind of containerization was good enough. People were used to the sharing economy, broadband connectivity was good enough, and the tools and applications that we needed to build a blockchain version of this were then mature enough. So we sold that company so we could basically build a global network using the spare computing capacity that was out there. So that was our approach. So we founded that company in 2017. And really we focused on using the spare computing. But the spare computing, if you kind of look at the main sectors, falls into kind of home machines, which quite often is games machines, high spec machines, falls into data centers, which is your typical tier 2 service providers. So the ones that are trying to compete with Amazon and Google, but don't have really the operations as good. But then also the mining farms, which have thousands or hundreds of thousands of high-end graphics cards, which is one of the most expensive resources. So we focused on building a platform that really was going to be able to make use of all that spare computing. So, in our last company, we were hosting actual early day miners, kind of going back to 2013, 2014. And they were actually running inside our data centers, but we weren't doing crypto ourselves. I think it got to 2016, is probably the first time I got into Bitcoin and into crypto as a technology. And then when I realized, we'd managed to kind of grow a large internet company as the internet took off. And I saw this as the next biggest technical revolution in what is going to change finance. It's going to change, the way ownership is as well, digital ownership, asset ownership, and really revolutionize, I think, as many things as the internet did. So that's the fascination, I think, that came from myself and the team. So a number of us came from that last company. Plus, we've grown the team now to about 70 plus. And we focused on building this global network that was going to use that spare computing.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to my next question, which you kind of started to answer already, which is, can you give us a bit of background on the Kudos team? Where are people located? What kind of experience do they have? And how are you guys distributed across the world?
Yeah, sure. So we started in the UK when we started the business or the project, and we've kind of expanded out from there. So We're still mostly UK, but also we have team members across Europe and the US now. And it's kind of growing as we grow as a global network. So our users on the network are in over 140 countries. So it is just a global service. So it makes sense that, that we've got a decentralized distributed team as well. And the teams are kind of made up of support, operations, development, research. And we've been growing at a pretty fast rate, certainly over the last 24 months, as we kind of scale up and build out. From a development perspective, we are focused a lot on R&D and development, because a lot of these things that we're doing is kind of the first time they've been distributed at this scale. So there's been a lot of development around that side. But the team members, we've got people that have built and scaled large IT service provider companies before. I've got my previous CTO that ran the large data center business. He came on board. Our COO has run large scale-up fintech companies. We've got people that have run in our blockchain team that have built a lot of dApps, and then also built and scaled other blockchain projects. So we've got a really good experienced team, both in the blockchain space, but also in the service provider space, which is really the mix that we need, because we're essentially merging blockchain and cloud.
And what about the name Kudos? If you didn't answer it in the first question, I have it on my list here to ask you to tell us why you chose the name Kudos and what's the story behind it.
Yes. So, Kudos is actually Latin for coin, because we wanted to be able to build a network that anyone could earn from. So that's essentially the idea behind it. And then, the K, usually Kudos as well is, or Kudos, sorry, is coin. Kudos with a K is where you're doing good and you're giving to someone. So what we want people on the network with a C is so that people can donate their computing resources. They can also donate their earnings to good causes and charities. So we want it as an open network that people can earn for themselves, but also they can donate to others. So we've got, I think I probably didn't cover on the team side as well. We're working with big service providers that can kind of help us in these different spaces that have come from running these large compute networks. So we've got also Jorg Roskowitz, who is the director for blockchain for AMD. We've got Chris Deering and Simon Stutter, who are the two previous presidents for PlayStation. And the PlayStation network's got over 100 million PlayStations on there, which is a huge compute network in itself, would be one of the largest compute networks in the world. We've also got people like Malcolm Tuck, who is the managing director for ESET, which is the third largest antivirus platform in the world. And they've got over 100 million users. So we've kind of, across that, partnered with kind of the real specialists in the space that give us mass scale, so that people can earn or people can donate to each other.
And looking forward to the future, can you walk us through Kudos' roadmap for the next 12 months? Maybe talk about some of the accomplishments you guys have made, some of the milestones you've hit over the last 12 months as well.
Yeah, sure. So we are literally a week or two away from Mainnet. We have been working tirelessly to get this out. It's been a lot of development for well over a year on this pure element. I mean, to date, if you look where we are, we kind of 2 to 3 years ago, we built and launched our monetization app. And that was really, we wanted any device to be able to connect to the network and instantly start earning. And to start with, we used various blockchain workloads that were already out there. We built kind of a profit engine, so it understands any device that joins onto the network, understands the most valuable compute and workloads that can run on those machines. It's sort of a self-learning network as well, that it understands, or it recognizes whether jobs fail on different types of hardware and won't run them, which gives us kind of a big scalable compute network. And then we've been focused on launching the actual mainnet, which means that we can then move a lot of that technology over onto the blockchain side. And yeah, we literally are about to go to mainnet. That means following that, we're then also enabling everyone that earns from our monetization network can then start earning Kudos as well on there. And then we have along in parallel with our blockchain been developing the compute part of the blockchain. So on the compute side, that means that we have a full monetization network. We have a full blockchain that scales as well. So it provides everything that you'd expect from a normal blockchain, such as smart contracts, governance, bridges, NFT support, high transaction, low cost. So it gives us everything that we need from a flexibility perspective. And it's also bridged onto Cosmos and Ethereum to start with from day one. But we have about another 8 or so bridges that we're working with to connect onto the other networks. Because once we're connected and bridged onto another network, it means that we can scale compute to that entire developer community. So we've partnered with people like Algorand and Elrond so that we can provide scalable computing to all of their developers as well. The network itself, we currently, you can provide compute if you're running PCs or servers onto the network, but we've got in the roadmap to launch console and mobile versions, which is obviously a much larger device count as well in the network. We have later in the year, there's a partnership with Tingo that we'd already announced that's going to give us about 20 million mobile phones initially, and then we're working with other African telecoms providers to roll out across those regions. And that makes quite a difference because you can earn about $5 to $15 per month on a mobile phone from the spare compute cycles when it's plugged in, connected to Wi-Fi, charging at night. We also are launching EVM support this year. And that means at the moment, the blockchain, the smart contracts are based on WASM, so they're a bit built in Rust, but you'll be able to build contracts in Solidity later on. We also have coming up over the next quarter our Launchpad. So that is a Launchpad where we've got a lot of projects. There's about 40 or 50 projects we're working with at the moment that are launching or integrating with Cudos. We've also got others that are in the raise element or they're in the early stages and they want to raise on our blockchain and build and launch on our blockchain. So we're launching our own Launchpad. So people and users can stake tokens onto Launchpad and get a chance to get in early on the pre-sales on those platforms. And we are in the process of very soon launching our foundation and our grants program for incentives basically for developers to build on top of our blockchain, but also to build the compute projects. So we have some competitions and challenges, cryptographic challenges coming out where you can use the compute network to try and break them. And there'll be prizes and rewards on that. Later in the year, we've also got, we work with a lot of games companies. So the advantage of our platform is that we can monetize any games machine, and then we can pay out in the tokens of the game that it's integrated into. So Coty is a good example, which was a games platform. They've integrated our software into their games application, and then we can monetize those spare cycles that are essentially on that computer. But if those games are running NFTs or they've got their own currency, all of that can run on our chain, and we can provide all of that kind of end to end. So we have Unity and Unreal SDKs coming out, so making it very easy for games companies to integrate into our blockchain. We've also already launched native NFT support. So if you have applications where you don't necessarily need to build a smart contract, you can natively create, mint, destroy NFTs on the blockchain without having to build your own smart contracts. So that works out faster, quicker, more efficient than doing it purely through a smart contract. If I kind of look longer term, we have a DApp marketplace that we're launching. So it's easy to find and discover the applications that are running on the network. We are working a lot on merging blockchain and compute. So we're working with some storage providers and other compute providers so that you will be able to scale out compute on the network. So let's say if you want to build, let's say if you wanted to build a video streaming service like LivePeer, you can build the smart contract on our network. You can create your own token, and then you can scale out to nodes anywhere in the world to provide a streaming service.
You keep catching me off guard here. I keep thinking you're finished, and then you've got more coming. It's amazing to hear everything that you guys have going on. So in my list here from questions that have been sourced from our community and the broader crypto community, the next one I have is related to Project Artemis. So I'm not familiar with actually what this is, but one of our users asked, I read that Project Artemis is now live. Could you tell us a bit more about what this project is, what phase you're on now, and how current Kudos users can participate?
Yeah, the Project Artemis was actually incentivized testnet to go onto the blockchain to build NFTs, test transferring assets across the bridge, build smart contracts, really to kind of get used to using the network, and then also so that we can get feedback and improve our tools and documentation. So that's coming to an end at the moment because we literally are about to go mainnet. But following that, we are then launching other incentives following mainnet to actually build applications on top of the network. So we will be announcing other incentives coming up very soon afterwards. And that's probably the best one for other people to get involved in. We also will be doing rewards and drops, actually. So if you build applications, if you're transacting on the blockchain, we will be doing rewards for that later on. So even if you're not directly part of a program, it is worth interacting and using the chain now.
And could you briefly expand on the Kudos network and the real life use cases of the native token, as well as the tokenomics in place? Now, you said the mainnet is coming out. So this is another question from our community. The mainnet's coming out, and how's it going to affect the existing token? Are you guys going to have a swap? And then what about, I think both the use cases and the token economics are relevant that you want to mention?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, we wanted to get the token into the community and get it out there. So we launched it back early last year in January as an ERC20, but we are swapping that over to our mainnet token. So if you are implemented into one of the staking programs, or you can also go on to our Explorer or console that's available from our website as well, put in your new mainnet wallet address, and then those tokens will automatically get migrated over to the mainnet. The advantage there is, we are adding to other DEXs, other centralized exchanges that are supporting mainnet. We're moving from obviously the cost of trading or transacting on an ERC20 down to microcents in transactions, and also much faster in speed. So the purpose is, and we have a bridge in place actually, so you can then either transfer assets across the bridge, or you can automate it if you put them, fill in the right information before we go mainnet. All of it's documented as well online in blogs on the process on how to do that if people are already token holders. As far as actually utilization for the token, naturally it's used for gas for transactions on the network and for running smart contracts. It can be used for bridges as well, so fees across the bridges into different blockchains. We have our launchpad, which is going live over the next few months. So users will be able to stake into the launchpad to get access to the new projects which are launching on our blockchain. We have what we've seen on some other chains is it's quite difficult to find all of the projects that are running on those chains. So we have a DApp marketplace that we're launching, which makes it very easy to find the different service providers and applications running on there, whether they're DeFi, NFTs, video rendering, those types of applications. And then if you want to actually interact with those dApps, if they don't have their own currency, then they're done in Kudos as well. So we have, I'll use an example, we've got a video rendering company that's going live on our blockchain. They sell into video production studios. And the video production studios have spare computing cycles in the week, often at lunchtimes, evenings, weekends. They have spare capacity, but at the end of the day, it gets to a Friday and they need to kick off a video rendering job with a large video rendering service provider. But they're not using their spare compute in the week. So these users can then earn Kudos in the week, gets to a Friday, and then they can kick off their video rendering job with a video rendering service provider that's running on the Kudos blockchain. So that we create that, everything that we do, we kind of create that network loop between supply and demand, because that's what creates utilization of the network. And if you just want to use it for scale out compute, and the scale out compute can be based on It can be permanent compute. So we have, if you use a Metaverse, for example, we've got multiple Metaverses that are either launching on Cudos or they are coming up with a multi-chain solution. And where they're finding restrictions on other chains, then they're also adding their token and NFTs to our chain. But at the moment, Metaverse is generally, you need to scale on compute for a Metaverse. So from our blockchain, you can then choose those nodes. So let's say, you need 1,000 nodes to run your Metaverse platform. That the Cudos can be used to spin up those nodes, and run those nodes anywhere in the world, distributed across however many countries you want to run that environment. So that's like the compute utilization on the network. And then we have everything else that you kind of get from a lot of the other networks. We have staking, which is currently providing a 22% yield. But that will go up once we go mainnet, because we have utilization, and then the transactions and the compute that gets spent on the network gets shared with the token holders as well. You can also earn. So if you provide compute into the network, then you get paid in Cudos, and the compute can be CPU, GPU, storage, or bandwidth. And then we also have partnered with different payment providers. So Tingo, for example, which is the African telecoms provider, your earnings can be converted into minutes and mobile data on their network. We've partnered with platforms like shopping.io, so you can convert the earnings from your, let's say it's your desktop PCs, earn you $100 in the month. You can then go and spend that on Amazon, Walmart, eBay, whichever platform you want. And then also we're partnered with many payment gateways, and we're adding more and more payment gateways over the coming quarters, so that you can interact that with any third party. I think from a use case perspective, just to give you an idea of some of the other projects that are launching on us, we have NFT marketplaces, which are running on our blockchain because it's more efficient, faster, and we're bridged onto multiple chains, so it's easy to transact and transfer the ERC20 assets to the NFT assets to other chains. We have actual NFT projects running on our network, so that if you look at let's say you've got an NFT collection, but it's a high graphics quality collection that you need to render those assets. If you've got something dynamic, such as being able to merge two NFTs together and then you mint a new NFT, at the moment, a lot of these projects still have to go back to Amazon and get that done, whereas we can do that in a decentralized manner directly from the smart contract. So it makes a lot of these things much more scalable, more cost efficient, but also more integrated basically into the smart contract. We've got things like video rendering, AI, machine learning, all these other kind of compute use cases that are running on the blockchain.
And we've actually received a lot of questions about your earn features as well. Can you tell us more about the staking aspect and the incentives you have in place related to that?
Sure. Yeah. So the ways that you can earn off the network are staking into the network, providing compute into the network, running validator nodes. You can also build smart contracts, and you get actually a cut of the transactions that go through the network when you build a smart contract. So the idea is, this is a network that you can earn from, but also you can consume compute resources. So if we just go for the staking, as I mentioned, is about 22% yield at the moment. But we have some large compute providers that are coming onto the network. Some of them are spending tens of millions of dollars a year with Amazon and Google and these other providers. The value of those gets distributed out on our blockchain into the providers that provide compute into the network, which again could be bandwidth compute, but also to the token holders. So it gets split amongst those. So, we expect, as the token release schedule goes down over a 10-year period, so it's kind of a curve as we go down, kind of over the next 12 months, we expect that curve to accelerate in the other direction through the compute and utilization that we've got on the blockchain. So the idea is that, that essentially, most of the revenue that is earned for token holders over the next 12 to 24 months will convert back into the utilization of the network. We do have validators as well on the program, which I think is probably one of the next questions, where you can run a validator in the network, and you earn rewards either from from users delegating to your validator, but also running the validator yourself. And we are also at the moment, if you run a compute node, what we try to do is run 100% utilization of those nodes. So what we've seen in a lot of other networks or projects is that that utilization might be 1%, 2%, 5%, but that's not much use if you've spent money on infrastructure. So we have built, and this is why we built the profit engine, is that it can understand the value of different workloads, and it can send constant, potentially lower value workloads to that device. And then as soon as a higher value workload comes in, it'll cease that work and it'll swap it and start paying out in that, paying out the extra kudos, while it's doing that work. That means that we can maximize the revenue that any device connects onto the network that it can generate on there.
And then shifting gears a bit, another topic we received a few questions about was around your more altruistic ambitions in protecting the earth and empowering various communities around the world. Can you speak to some of the ways in which the Cudos team keeps both of these issues in mind as you continue to grow your projects? And I know you've mentioned this a little bit, but here's a question dedicated to that topic.
Yeah, sure. So, we've wanted to make the blockchain and the technology carbon negative ourselves. And the network is really split up into two layers. You've got your core layer, which is the validator layer. That's the one that runs consensus, runs bridges, governance, smart contracts. That we've partnered with, and that runs up to just over 100 nodes. But they're decentralized around the world, so that gives us the decentralized core. We've partnered with Climate Trade to make that carbon negative on that network. But already, because it's a proof of stake network, not proof of work, it's about 2 million times more efficient than proof of work networks like Ethereum. But then we have the compute network, and the compute network is designed to use computing that's already there. So about 60 to 70% of the CO2 that's produced in cloud today is actually from the production of the server, shipping it to site, installing it in a data center, building the data center that supports it, rather than the actual operation, especially as more and more data centers are moving over to carbon negative, or carbon neutral electricity, renewable energy electricity. So if we can remove that usage of the hardware and the production of the hardware up front, that massively reduces the impact. So this is why we are working with people and users that already have PCs, home machines at work, why they've got mobile phones that are already sat there doing nothing while they're sat asleep, PlayStations that are running 80, 90% spare capacity that when they're not being played on. All this infrastructure, as well as the service providers. So we work with service providers that typically, after the first one or two generations of hardware, a lot of it just goes into storage and doesn't get used. So we reignite that and reuse that spare capacity that's in there. So all of this is using existing capacity rather than keep building servers, keep building data centers. Let's use what's already out there. We're also working with some projects which, there's a bit of an irony in the mining space, but actually, if you do mining in the right way, then you are doing decarbonization. So we're working with some projects in the US, where if you look at gas companies at the moment, spare gas that can't get used anywhere is just literally flared into the air. So it's burnt into the air, which is incredibly bad for the environment. These mining farm companies are putting their equipment in containers. They put it with generators alongside. They basically, take the energy from that. They clean the air, they filter it, and then that's what goes into the environment, and then the energy gets used. So we work with these types of projects to be able to monetize and realize, better gains out of that infrastructure. So it's not only carbon negative, it's actually removing some of the negative impact of what's going into the environment at the moment. We're also in talks with some renewable energy, like solar panel providers, and farm providers to actually bring energy into locations that don't have particularly good electrical supply. And by working with the mining farm containers, that provides enough profits into the area that we can actually start to provide additional electricity into the local grid. It provides local employment. It also provides profits that can be reinvested back into the local environment and local economy. And we're in talks in doing that in Africa at the moment. So we're kind of working across the board, trying to find where are the locations that we can actually have the biggest impact using the technology that we built.
The next question I have on my list is in relation to your partnership with AMD. So recently you announced a partnership with them. Can you talk about the hardware, or if they're creating any hardware for Cudos, and what other benefits does this partnership bring?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working with AMD probably for about 3 years or so now. And they, as a energy efficient solution, they are the most energy efficient GPU and CPU provider that's out there. And naturally providing both of those solutions rather than previously you have a different supplier for NVIDIA, different provider for different provider for CPU, one for GPU. It works very well from a market perspective as well for us to get deployment into lots of hardware. So working with AMD, they actually introduce us to a lot of their partners directly. So we work with, if I take Sapphire, for example, which is one of the largest graphics cards providers. We work with them where our software gets pre-installed on their rigs, and we're able to monetize that computing that runs on those rigs. Games companies such as GOTY are partnered with AMD, where they're using our software to be able to monetize gamers' machines. We've got partnerships with other large GPU providers like Morganrock that we've worked with that have huge GPU farms. So a lot of it's actually working with their partners, and that's how the relationships worked really well. And they provide those introductions for us. We have also been working, and we are working to release kind of the hardware integrated version and the hardware encrypted version of our software later in the year. And the advantage there is the AMD EPIC chips, which are incredibly powerful in being able to do hardware encryption. So we see that as one of the roadmap features, actually, which I didn't mention earlier, which will enable securely to be able to transfer, computing requirements from any device to any other device. And if you look at the console side, both the AMD PlayStation and Xbox are built on AMD hardware. So we've already worked with them to get our software working inside kind of lab environments. But that's not into production at the moment. That's something that we're working on.
And as a follow-up to that question, we've had lots of interest in potential partnerships that Cudos may enter. And another question we received in relation to that was Cudos has great partners like Fetch, Gather Network, and Ultra. What is the basis for the selection of these partnerships? And how are these partnerships contributing to Cudos' success? Can you tell us about any plans for future partnerships?
Sure. So all of those partnerships are based around compute. So, Fetch is an AI platform. They need scalable AI compute in a decentralized manner, being able to scale AI for their smart contracts, and also to be able to analyze and act based on the data that's in their network. Ones like Gather Network, they need nodes to be able to run scalable compute on, which we can provide on the network. And then also we can run Gather inside our network itself, so we can provide scaling compute nodes. And then Ultra, they are looking to monetize the users' machines so that we can turn the spare computing capacity on a gamer's machine into revenue. And again, they want to focus on the compute side for that. One, because it's better use of hardware that's running there, but also it provides much higher returns. So a high spec games machine can be doing a few $100s per month in revenue, which is a big conversion into the amount of games that people can buy. So really, all these types of partnerships that we're focused on is either us being able to provide compute into that network or being able to provide monetization. So we work with other projects, that we've talked about, like Euler Digital. It's exactly the same. They want to have decentralized scale out compete for their AI marketplace. So this is a really fast growing area, and especially as decentralization and is working in kind of these different verticals, we're focused on being that compute network that can service not only our own developers, but developers of every other blockchain that we connect onto. On the compute side as well, you're asking about probably what other partnerships we have. We have some large NFT marketplaces that we're working with, because they need to be able to store, they need to be able to act based on data coming in, via oracles, and be able to do different things that you can't do in the NFT market space at the moment. I think we'll find out more when we announce it later on. But also there's things like the NFT rendering that we were talking about. A lot of our partnerships and companies we're working with as well at the moment are in the Metaverse space, because there isn't really a large scale out Metaverse provider at the moment that can provide this capacity. So that's what we've been working on, that can also provide the end-to-end NFT support, token support, and actually provide an all-in-one solution. So a lot of the projects are working on that. And then if you look at probably outside the pure blockchain space, we're working with the normal AI, video rendering, machine learning providers, anyone that really needs high scalable compute in that sector.
And now switching gears to another hot topic in the crypto world, one of our users also asked, what is the role of Cudos in the metaverse? Will it be as a builder or creator or something else? And what are your technologies or services supporting that role?
Yes. So if you look at kind of from an infrastructure perspective, metaverses need nodes to run on, which is majority is CPU, storage, and bandwidth. They also need to be able to have their own tokens, and they need to run NFTs for their assets. So our tech stack provides all three of those. So it means that a metaverse can run the entire platform on our blockchain, which is much better than the current solution, where efficiently, if you want to run lots of transactions, so you can't run on Ethereum, you either need to run on a layer 2, and then you normally need to scale out your nodes on AWS or some other provider. So being able to provide that one network that can do all of it is very valuable. And if you look at a metaverse node, depending on how complicated the environment is that you've built, but a good budget can be somewhere like 150 users per node that connects onto it. But also they need to be low latency, so they need to be distributed around the world in different locations. And let's say you want to have 1 million users for, it could be a video launch, or it could be even the permanent environment that you've got. That's 6,000 nodes plus that need to be around the world. So that's sort of one of the verticals that we're focused on in the metaverse side, because we're one of the few networks that will be able to scale to do that. And then on the other side with metaverses is, often they have a desktop application. So we can monetize the user's machine with the desktop application, and then they can get paid out in the token of the metaverse itself. So we can create that link between supply and demand. And because we are shortly bringing out, the SDKs to make it much easier for these platforms to integrate on, that this is sort of why we're ending up working with a lot of service providers and metaverse builders at the moment. So Animoca Brands is kind of one of our larger backers as well. They own Sandbox and a lot of other games and integrations that have been built in the metaverse as well.
And for our final question in today's AMA, what's the best way for our users to get involved in Cudos? What's the on-ramp you suggest for those that are not part of the community yet to become part of the community?
Sure. I would say, going to our website, which is kudos.org. From there, it kind of links off to everything else. But if you sign up to the Twitter, Discord, Telegram, that kind of will give you the communication. We also have newsletters and blogs. So sign up to the Medium blog as well. That would be good. Blogs come out regularly with our partnerships, but also the developer programs that we've got coming out, and the developer incentives and the challenges that we're launching. So that's probably the best way to get permanently updated. Also, if you want to get involved in the rewards that we're going to be doing, interact with the chain, create some smart contracts, join some of the developer programs in Discord, transfer assets, use the bridge, just actively use the network, and we'll be doing rewards for that as well.
Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us on today's AMA. I've learned a lot about Cudos and what you guys are working on, what's coming, and I'm excited to see what happens over the next 12 months. And for those of you who are looking to learn more about Cudos and the Cudos token, please visit www.cudos.org, as you mentioned, and that's CUDOS.org. And thank you again for your partnership with Bittrex Global.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.